My son locked me in the guest room like I was some forgotten burden, stripped me of the very space I raised him in, and gave my bed, my memories, my peace, to a woman who treated me like dust. So I stayed quiet, smiled through the hurt, signed the sale papers behind their backs, and sold the entire house while they slept in the room that used to be mine. Thank you for sitting with me today. This story I'm about to tell, it ain't light, and it sure ain't pretty. It's been sittin' in my chest for years like a stone I couldn't swallow and couldn't spit out either. But you know how it is. Sometimes the truth don't stay buried, no matter how deep you try to tuck it. It rises up, scratching at your throat, begging to be told. And maybe, just maybe, if I let it out, someone out there might feel a little less alone. So before I begin, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. If you're watching this, whether you sittin' in your kitchen with coffee going cold, or laying on your couch trying to make sense of your own heartache, I see you. I feel you. Tell me where you're watching from. Are you in Alabama? New York City? Out in the Midwest where the wind don't play nice? Drop it in the comments. Let's not just make this a video. Let's make it a porch, a space where folks like us can sit a while and be real. And if you've got a story that's been weighing heavy on your chest, don't keep it locked up like I did. Don't let it eat away at your spirit. You can share it with me. There's an email down below, and I promise you, I'll hold it with care. Just like I'm holding mine now. I'm Louise May. I'm 79 years old, born and raised down in Mississippi, where the summers are hot and the porch swings never stop creaking. I've been a widow since I was 34 years old. Lost my husband to a heart attack one cold Sunday morning. He kissed me on the cheek, said he was going to fix the gutter, and never came back down that ladder. After that, it was just me and my boy. I didn't have much, but I had grit. Worked every job that came my way. I scrubbed motel bathrooms with bleach that burned my hands. Woke up before sunrise to serve breakfast in a school cafeteria where the kids barely looked up, and then came home and stitched clothes by lantern light for church folk, just to put beans on the table. We didn't have money for extras, but we had warmth. We had prayers before supper. We had stories at night. And my son Marcus, he was my whole world. My reason for getting up when I didn't feel like moving. Bright boy. Always had a quiet mouth and a busy mind. He'd sit next to me on the floor while I hemmed dresses, reading books with big eyes and soft questions like, "Mama, why do people leave?" And I'd just smile and say because they forget what they had. He was sweet, Lord. He was sweet. He used to draw me little pictures and tape them to the fridge with bent-up spoons because we couldn't afford magnets. He didn't care that we didn't have much. He just needed me. And I needed him. We were a pair, a team. I gave him everything I had, every dime, every prayer, every ache in my back and blister on my hand. I saved up for years to buy this house. It ain't no mansion, but it was ours. Paid for with tears and calloused hands. I remember laying down the first rug in that bedroom. The same room he'd later lock me out of. And I never thought he'd turn cold. Not Marcus. But sometimes, baby, sometimes the very world you build with your own two hands is the one that pushes you out. You raise them with love, but you can't always teach them to remember where they came from. It was just a regular Thursday. The kind of day where your bones ache a little more than usual, but you still lace up your shoes and go on about your business. I remember I had a coupon for the pharmacy, and I needed my arthritis pills and a little cocoa butter for my knees. I even stopped by the dollar store to grab some orange soda. Marcus liked that kind when he was a boy. I figured maybe I'd surprise him. I came home, arms full of little things I didn't really need, but bought anyway. 'Cause when you're alone in the house long enough, even picking out dish soap feels like company. But when I walked in, I knew something was off. It was too quiet. The air felt still, like the walls were waiting for me to notice. I put my bags down and walked toward my bedroom, the same room I'd slept in for over 40 years. The same room I cried in when my husband passed. The same room I rocked Marcus in when he had the croup. That room held my whole life, but the door was shut. And not just shut, locked. From the inside, I jiggled the handle, knocked a few times, called out, "Marcus?" And that's when she opened it, Tanya. Standing there in my doorway like she owned the place. face full of smug, lips curled like she'd been waiting for this moment. No hi Mama Louise, no can I help you? Just this blank, mean look. Like I was a stray dog showing up where I didn't belong. And then Marcus came around the corner, rubbing his eyes like he just woke up. He looked at me, real casual, and said, "It's just for a while, Ma. Tanya needs space." Just for a while? Tanya needs space? I laughed. I really did. Thought maybe it was some kind of prank. Maybe they were painting the room or fixing the carpet. But then I saw 'em. My boxes, stacked right there in the hallway like trash waiting to be picked up. My framed photos, my church hats, my nightgown, tossed into bins like I was moving out of a hotel, not my own home. And not a word was said to me beforehand. Not a conversation, not a warning. Just decided, behind my back, like I was a guest in the house I built. That's when it hit me. The rules had changed, the air had shifted, and somehow, I went from mama to inconvenience. From queen of the castle to some old woman taking up space. And baby, I stood there with my hands shaking, heart thundering, and I didn't say a word. But inside me, something broke. And right behind that break, something else started to grow. The days that followed felt like a slow erasing. Not loud, not violent, just quiet, cruel, and steady. Like someone was peeling me off the walls of my own life, one piece at a time. First it was my toothbrush. Gone from the bathroom sink where it sat for over 30 years. Replaced by some fancy electric thing with initials on it that sure as hell didn't belong to me. My favorite towel, the pink one with the worn corners I used every night, gone. No explanation. No apology. Just disappeared like I never used it in the first place. Then it was the living room. My chair, my soft green recliner with the quilt I made stitched into the back, pushed into a corner, half covered by moving boxes that weren't mine. Tanya brought in some slick, modern-looking thing and plopped it right where I used to sit to do my Bible study. Not once did she ask. Not once did she look my way. And Marcus, my Marcus. He couldn't even look me in the eye anymore. Every time I tried to talk, he'd mumble something about being busy, then head straight into that room. My room. The same room I'd nursed him in when he had measles. The same room I stayed up all night in when he didn't come home his senior prom night. I painted that room with my own hands. I picked those curtains. That bed was where I gave life. And where I said goodbye to the only man I ever loved. And now, it was hers. That woman. That stranger in my house. That cold smile and heels. She'd taken over my space, my son, and worst of all, my silence. Every little thing she did felt like a message. A message that I didn't matter anymore. That I was in the way. That I was just waiting to die. She started making little comments at dinner too. Some people don't understand boundaries, she'd say, looking straight ahead. Or she'd sigh real loud when I asked a question. Like my words were just noise she had to suffer through. She didn't say my name. Just called me her or your mama, like I was some stray mutt they were being forced to feed. And Marcus, he let her. Every single time. My boy, the same boy who once cried when I missed a school play, just sat there and chewed his food. Didn't defend me. Didn't blink. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was the old lady in the guest room. The shadow in the hallway. The burden they were too cowardly to put out, so they locked me away and hoped I'd fade on my own. And maybe that's the part that cut deepest. Not the room. Not the chair. Not even the disrespect. But the knowing. Knowing in my gut that the boy I raised with every piece of me had stopped seeing me as human. Just when I thought the walls would close in on me for good, God sent me a light. Soft but steady, like a candle flickering in the middle of a storm. Her name is Jasmine, my granddaughter from my eldest daughter, Ruth Ann, 18 years old and already wiser than most grown folks I know. She's got her mama's heart and her daddy's grit. Quiet as a whisper, but when she speaks, you listen. Always been that way. Jasmine came by one Saturday, unannounced, which was her way. Said she missed my banana bread and wanted to show me pictures of the college she got into. First in our family to make it that far. I was so proud I could have floated. But the minute she stepped inside, I saw her face change. She looked around, eyebrows furrowed. The air was thick with tension even she could feel. I offered her a glass of sweet tea and tried to smile like everything was normal. But she's got my blood and my eyes. She knew something wasn't right. She walked with me to the guest room, paused at the door, then asked real soft, "Granny, why is Aunt Tanya sleeping in your room?" I didn't say much. Just lowered my head and sat on the edge of that twin bed, hands folded in my lap like I was back in church. But she knew. She knew without me saying a word. She sat beside me, didn't push, just held my hand. That same little hand I used to braid when she was 5. We sat in that silence for a long time. The kind that don't need filling. Then she said, "This ain't right. You don't deserve this." And then, she pulled out her phone. Took pictures of the boxes, the locked door, the toothbrush that wasn't mine. She walked through the house and documented everything. Every detail. Every piece of evidence that showed how I'd been erased in my own home. Later that night, we sat in my car. I couldn't sleep. She leaned in, her voice calm but fierce, and said, "Granny, you still own this house. Your name's on the deed. You built this. Don't let them steal what you bled for." Those words, "Don't let them steal what you bled for," they cracked something open in me. I had spent so long being silent, trying to keep the peace, pretending that respect would just show up if I stayed kind enough. But Jasmine, she gave me permission to stop pretending. She reminded me of who I was before they made me feel small. She didn't just see me. She believed me. And sometimes, baby, all it takes is one person to stand with you for you to remember how to stand for yourself. That night, after Jasmine left, I sat alone in the guest room, the little corner they shoved me into, and I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling like it might answer the questions weighing on my chest. My body felt tired, but my spirit, baby, it was starting to wake up. I got up out of that creaky bed, barefoot, and walked through the house like a ghost in my own story. They were in my bedroom, lights off, curled up in my bed like they earned that peace. But they didn't know. The woman they tried to erase was still alive in every wall, every floorboard, every nail in that house. I had built it with blistered hands and sleepless nights. I was still there, and I still had the last word. I went straight to my old sewing box, the one with the broken clasp and the little sunflower patch on the top, dug underneath the pin cushions, under the faded lace and thread spools. And there it was. The deed. My name on it in bold black ink. Louise May Johnson. Not Marcus. Not Tanya. Me. I held that paper like a newborn. Shaky hands, heart pounding, breath coming slow. I whispered out loud to myself, more prayer than statement, "They took my peace. But they won't take my name off that paper. Not while I'm still breathing." The next morning I called up my old church friend, Miss Gloria Jean. She's the kind of woman who always knows somebody who knows somebody, and I knew if anyone could help, it'd be her. "Gloria," I said, voice barely steady, "I need to talk to a lawyer, quietly." She didn't ask questions, didn't press, just said, "Baby, I'll have someone call you this afternoon. You just sit tight and hold your chin up." And sure enough, by sunset, a lawyer named Mr. Curtis Franklin, clean voice, polite tone, called me. Said Gloria had sent him and he'd be happy to help. I faxed him the deed from the corner store the next morning. He called back not an hour later and said, "Miss Johnson, this house is fully in your name. You have every legal right to do whatever you want with it." That was the moment. That was when my quiet pain turned into quiet power. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't march down the hallway and demand my room back. No, baby, I started planning. I searched for listings. I talked to a sweet real estate lady named Miss Carla, who came by when they were out of the house. I walked her through each room like a hostess who ain't lost her dignity. I didn't tell a soul what I was doing, not Marcus, not Tanya, not even Ruth Ann. Because I'd learned something. Sometimes the loudest revenge is silence. Sometimes the best way to reclaim what's yours is to walk quiet and let the walls speak for you. And so I did. Every day, one step closer to freedom, one silent breath at a time. The papers were signed on a Wednesday. Miss Carla called me up and said, "Miss Johnson, it's done. The sale went through. You're no longer the homeowner. You're now the seller." I hung up the phone, sat on the porch and looked out over that patchy little lawn I used to pull weeds from. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just breathed. For the first time in months, I could feel the air reach the bottom of my lungs. That night, I packed my things quiet. No fuss. Just the things that mattered. My Bible, my wedding ring, a few framed pictures of my babies before they forgot who I was to them. I left the rest. Let them have the towels, the pots, the furniture they thought they owned. I had my name, and my peace. That was enough. The movers came early Saturday morning, a strong young crew with respectful manners and gentle hands. I told them, "Don't touch the guest room, just everything else." They nodded without question. Marcus and Tanya were still in bed. Imagine that. Sleeping sound like royalty in my house with no idea they were about to be evicted from the kingdom they hijacked. I left the envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, one copy of the eviction notice, the final sale paperwork, and a short note written in my best cursive. "This home has been sold. You have until sundown to leave. This ain't revenge. This is release. Mama." It was around 8:42 a.m. when I heard the first shout. "Ma, what the hell is going on?" I didn't flinch. Just stood by the front door, pocketbook on my arm, keys in my hand like I was heading to church. Marcus came storming into the living room, hair wild, eyes wide, looking like a boy again. Not the grown man who locked his mother out of her own bedroom, but the little boy who used to lose his mind when someone touched his toy cars. Behind him came Tanya, wearing my old housecoat like she bought it herself, face twisted in fury. I looked at him, calm, strong, unshaken, and said, "You moved me out of my bedroom, so I moved you out of my house." He blinked like he didn't understand English. Tanya stepped forward, finger wagging, mouth already ready to spit fire. "You can't do this. You don't get to." I cut her off with a stare so sharp she damn near stumbled. "I may be old, but I ain't blind, and I ain't stupid. Y'all thought I'd sit in that guest room till I rotted, but baby, I'm still breathing, and I still own my name." They didn't say much after that. Maybe they were shocked, maybe they were ashamed, or maybe they finally saw what they'd been trying not to. That the woman they tried to push into silence was still the same woman who raised them with iron and honey. I turned to leave. Didn't wait for them to beg. Didn't need their sorries. Walked down those porch steps like I was 20 years younger. Keys jangling in my hand and the sun warm on my back. That house wasn't mine anymore. But me? I was finally mine again. I didn't need much. Didn't want much either. Just something small, quiet, and mine. The senior apartment I moved into wasn't fancy. No marble counters, no vaulted ceilings. But baby, the peace in that little space was worth more than any chandelier. It had one bedroom, a cozy kitchen with a little round table just big enough for two, and a porch that caught the morning sun like it was waiting just for me. And for the first time in years, everything stayed where I left it. My coffee cup sat on the windowsill, same spot every morning. My shoes didn't get moved or kicked under a couch. My favorite house sweater hung on the back of my kitchen chair, smelling like lavender and freedom. I had a rocking chair that didn't squeak out of neglect. It squeaked because it was alive, because I was. I remember that first night, sitting on my new porch. The wind blew soft through the trees. I could hear birds settling in their nests, and I just sat there, breathing. Not scared, not anxious, not waiting for someone to come take something from me. I slept that night without locking my door from the inside. That might not mean much to some, but to me, that meant everything. For the first time in I don't know how long, I wasn't watching my back. I wasn't listening for footsteps in the hallway. I wasn't shrinking myself in a corner of a house I paid for. I slept with my door wide open, and my heart quiet. Jasmine came by a week later. Walked through the front door like she'd been coming there all her life. She brought flowers, sunflowers my favorite, and a bag of kettle corn. She looked around, grinned big, and said, "Granny, this is your kingdom now." We sat on that porch, sipping sweet tea and talking about nothing and everything. She told me about her classes, about the boy who kept trying to sit next to her in biology. I told her to keep her eyes on the books. She rolled hers at me, just like her mama used to, and we laughed. Not just chuckled, we laughed. That kind of deep belly laugh that comes from feeling safe, from knowing you're seen, from finally being somewhere you don't have to apologize for taking up space. I looked at her and said, "You saved me, baby. You reminded me who I was before they made me forget." And she just leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You been that woman the whole time, Granny? You just needed someone to say it out loud." And she was right. It was nearly 4 months after I moved into my new place when I heard the knock. Soft. Slow. The kind that ain't urgent but ain't casual either. The kind that says, "I don't know if I'm welcome, but I'm here anyway." I opened the door and there he was. Marcus. He stood there looking smaller than I remembered. Not just thinner, though he was, but diminished somehow. His shoulders slumped, eyes hollow, hair grown out in a way that said he hadn't been looking after himself. He looked like a man who'd been walking around with regret in his pocket. He didn't smile, didn't say hey ma. Just stood there and whispered, I'm sorry ma. I didn't see it until it was too late. And for a moment, we just looked at each other. Me, the woman who carried him, raised him, fed him with food she sometimes didn't eat herself. Him, the boy I once rocked to sleep who had turned into a man I didn't recognize. I didn't cry, but I felt it. The ache in my chest swelling, like an old wound getting touched. I stepped aside, just a little. Not enough to invite him all the way in, but enough to let the breeze pass between us. I motioned toward the kitchen and said, There's tea on the stove, if you want some. He walked in, slow, quiet. Not the loud, confident man Tanya had turned him into, but the little boy who used to ask if we could bake cookies on Sundays. He sat at the table and kept his eyes on his hands. I poured the tea, sat across from him, and for a minute or two, we didn't speak, just the sound of 2 cups on old wood and a ceiling fan clicking above us. Then I said it, calm, plain. Son, I forgave you the day you broke my heart. Not because you earned it, but because I couldn't carry all that bitterness with me into the rest of my life. He nodded, eyes glassy. But then I added, But baby, forgiveness don't come with keys. You don't get to walk back into my life and pretend the walls didn't fall down. I had to rebuild Marcus, and I did it without you. That landed hard. I saw it, and he didn't argue, didn't beg, just whispered, I understand. Before he left, he stood in the doorway like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. I left that door half open. Not wide. Just enough to let him know that while I still loved him, trust was something he'd have to earn, not by saying sorry, but by changing who he was. Sometimes, baby, redemption don't come with a hug. Sometimes, it comes with a half-open door and a long, quiet walk back to grace. Let me tell you something, baby. The bedroom was never the point. It wasn't about sheets or pillows or who got to sleep on which side of the mattress. It wasn't about space. It was about respect. It was about dignity, about not being erased in the very place you gave your life to build. Sometimes the folks you raise, the ones you fed with tired hands, the ones you stayed up all night praying over, they grow up and forget the hands that fed them. They forget your sacrifices, your silence, your soft places. And in that forgetting, they start to treat you like you're disposable. But sugar, don't you ever let them write you out of your own story. I gave that boy my best years, and he gave my bed to a woman who never even looked me in the eye. But I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just reminded myself who the house belonged to, and who I belonged to. And when the time came, I sold that house not out of spite, but out of survival. Because love don't live in rooms, love lives in dignity. It lives in peace. And baby, I sold that house to buy mine back. So, if you're sitting there watching this with heaviness in your heart, thinking you gotta stay where you're disrespected, let me be the first to tell you you don't. You can leave. You can stand up, you can start again, even if your hands shake when you sign the papers. And if you ever had to take your life back piece by piece, if you ever had to gather yourself from the corner someone else pushed you into, tell me your story. You ain't alone, baby. I'm listening. Drop it in the comments, or send it to me. We might not be blood, but we're kin in spirit. This world is full of folks trying to silence us, women, mamas, grandmamas, but we still hear. We still got our voice. And sometimes the softest voice speaks the loudest truth. So thank you, truly, for sitting with me today and letting me tell my truth. If my story touched your heart or reminded you of your own strength, go on and give this video a like. It helps more folks like us find each other. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories about life, love, betrayal, and quiet redemption, hit that subscribe button and stay a while. 'Cause around here, we don't just tell stories, we heal through them. Until next time, this is Granny. Holden. You close in spirit.